Welcome to Executive Access, created for motivated professionals. This is your home for real talk with executives about their career journeys, leadership practices, successes, and learnings along the way. I am your host, Jamie Tazi. Today, we'll hear from CEO of Permuta Technologies, Sig Behrens. Sig has an impressive background. He was a senior leader at Microsoft previously and at Blackboard. He built his own tech services company from scratch and has several B2C entrepreneurial ventures going on as well. Sig is a very special kind of leader. I call him the spark because he enables, empowers all of those around him to do more than they ever thought possible. And this powerful quality, it not only gets the best out of others to create untold impact in the organization, it helps create confidence in those that you spark and followership. I felt this spark many times just talking to Sig about ideas he has for me. So it's really phenomenal. Sig also talks about his CIA formula, which means challenge, interest, and aptitude, as a framework for how to think about steering your career. He discusses his love for history and how studying some of the greats like Patton and Rommel and Alexander the Great really inspired his leadership. And finally, how a focus on team and people as individuals is really what it's all about. I can't wait for you to meet Sig Behrens, or the Spark, as I call him. Let's dive in. Welcome, Sig Behrens, to the Executive Access. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be fortunate to join your the show and this experience, Jamie.
Well, you are the CEO of Permuta Technologies, which is a business applications company. You provide solutions for government organizations. Your background is pretty vast. You've been a technology executive for Microsoft and for many large organizations, and an entrepreneur. In tech, you primarily led large government and education teams, although that's not the extent of your background. You have had multiple groundbreaking wins, both strategically and on deal size, particularly at Microsoft. I know we'll probably talk about some of those later. The biggest reason, though, my secret reason for having you on here, in addition to your accomplishments, is you just make things happen. That's your brand. You win, and you do it in unexpected ways, and you disrupt, and you seem so comfortable doing it. So many people are not as comfortable. So I have a goal for this podcast episode today is to figure out and dive into how you actually do that. So I'm telling you what my goal is ahead of time. So we'll get into that in a little bit. So welcome again. Anything to add on your background, or did I do it pretty good justice?
No, thank you. We are, so the weird thing about being the CEO of Permuta is I recruited Permuta when I was at Microsoft to the Microsoft platform in 2005, not knowing almost 20 years later, I'd be the CEO of this company. It's kind of bizarre, twist of fate. But we all start off entry level. You did, I did, so did my wife, so did your husband, and we just rose up through the ranks. And it's been an amazing ride and wonderful journey. And I'm just so excited to be hanging out with you today and talk about how things have worked out for us and lessons learned and things like that. Maybe other people can take from that and go from there.
Excellent. Well, I would love to start. I'm glad you said starting early, because I want to go way back. I want to hear first your backstory, what shaped you, because as you are a disruptor, my sense is that those tendencies and those qualities really started early, back when you were a youngster. So why don't you give us a little bit about your background?
Well, I have a humble background. So I was the first one in my family to get 4 years of a college experience. My mother did go 2 years as an associate degree as a nurse. So my mother's a nurse. My father's a chef and ran food and beverage at a big resort eventually. But he came from Germany. My mom met him in Germany. She went over there, met her boyfriend, brought him back. And here I am. And I'm Siegfried Behrens III. My dad's Siegfried Behrens II, et cetera. But and I spent a lot of time in Germany as a kid. They would some kids went to summer camp. I went to Germany camp. I stayed with my grandparents and quickly had to learn German because they didn't speak English that well. You start with salt and pepper and the plates and the knives and the forks, and you learn you start with food and it expands from there. And now I'm pretty fluent in German, especially if we get a couple beers in me, I can go over there and speak pretty fluently. But
Nice.
my family has just a strong background in hard work, just a hard work ethic. So I was raised with that, watching that. My parents separated and divorced when I was in first grade, and I watched my mom raise us pretty much on her own. I would spend some weekends and summers with my dad and go to Germany and stuff from time to time. But my mom was a hardworking nurse, and she was a trauma nurse, and so it was. And she did everything she could to take care of us. And, sometimes the helicopter, the trauma helicopter would fly over the house on the way to the hospital. And then the phone would ring and then she got called in. So it was tough being alone a lot. I had to help my brother, who was 6 years younger than me, at a very early age, take care of him and get him around and feed him breakfast and sometimes dinner and things like that. But our parents really shaped us into being hardworking. And my first job, I was 14 years old, washing dishes, 15 years old, bussing tables. I wasn't making any money. It was like $2 an hour or something and like a couple bucks in tips. And frankly, I'll tell a story. And I've had every job you can have in a resort. You name you go to a resort, housekeeping, groundskeeping, bussing tables, waiter, line cook, whatever it is, I've had them all. But I actually got fired by my father when I was 14 years old because I wasn't making. Yeah, my dad fired me. I was stupid. I made a big mistake. I saw $2 on a table. I was like, I'll just tuck these in my sock. And sure enough, a customer told my dad that story. And then he's like, my dad has a very strong German accent. Like, he talks like Schwarzenegger. He's like, you're fired. And I had to go sit in his car for like 5 hours and wait for him. He's like, you're fired and you're banned from here for 2 years. And so I couldn't come on the property for a long time. It was humiliating, but I learned a strong lesson in that the integrity. I learned about the value of, doing the right thing when people aren't looking matters more than anything else. So, but I learned that at a very young age, and it helped shape me. But the hard work part, and I've always been working, always worked in the restaurant business, always being a server, and that really shaped me into sales, I would say, in the future. You learn how to read people. You learn how to understand how people act, and you can predict how people might act at the table. So if you're trying to upsell or promote something that's unique, you can kind of read the table over time and learn people's personalities. And I think that really shaped how I was eventually going to be a pretty strong salesperson and eventually sales leader.
Well, I love that you have the restaurant background. I too worked in a restaurant, and I really believe that everybody should work in a restaurant when they're younger. My boys at 14 years old were like, Tazi rule, you're 14, you have to go get a job. So they worked they still do work at Publix, which is similar in terms of customer service and engaging with people. But it does teach you so much, right? So I love that background. I also love that your dad didn't save you. I think as a parent, sometimes I think about saving my kids from any kind of hurt or embarrassment or any failure. But looking back, sometimes those failures help us because it's like, I never want to feel that again. You probably never wanted to feel that shame and embarrassment again, and it taught you something.
100%.
Yeah.
Better to get that out of the way when you're, at that age, because the emotions you have when you're younger just sink and they're like, it's so much more powerful when things happen to you at a younger age. Your heart's like burning with desire and passion, and when things hurt, they hurt bad. And so, that made a huge mark. And I don't encourage parents to fire their kids.
But hey, if they deserve it, I would fire my child if I had to.
But I tell my kids the story all the time, and I'm like, try and avoid this. But if it does happen to you, you're going to learn from it. So
so then you got into politics a bit, right? And moved to DC, and were able to differentiate yourself from others. Can you talk about that? Because I think that is part of the same thread about how you're doing things differently.
I stole this line I'm about to tell you from the superintendent of Washington State, who gave me this, like, I'm like, hey, I'm going to do a commencement speech. This is, not that long ago, for high school in Loudoun County. And like, it's like, what? And he gave me this like idea, and it was perfect. He's like, talk about CIA. I'm like, the CIA? He's like, no, CIA. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, challenge, interest, and aptitude. Try and do, you should like, help change, like, think of your own journey in your career and kids, and like, they should do things that are C, challenging, I, interesting, and A, they have the aptitude for it. It's hard to find all three. So when I look at my career, yes, I wanted to be a pilot. So my first thing, I was like, oh, I watched Top Gun. I want to go to Florida and fly planes and stuff. And I did. I was a pilot. I was a pilot at 18 years old. I was flying around over the ocean at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. It was challenging. It was interesting. Had no aptitude at all for that, like zero. Like, I was not an engineer, did not interest in engineering. And like, my plane like hit, like, one day, like, clipped like a palm tree coming in for landing. And I'm like, okay, that's a sign. I should not be doing this. So I switched gears and went from there to Penn State, my home state, and I studied politics. I like international politics, being German, and spent time in Europe. I'm like, oh, I could be like a spy or something, or be in diplomatic corps, State Department. And so that, and I it was again, hard work. It was up at 8:00 in the morning, my fraternity house. No one's up at 8:00 in the morning in a fraternity house. I was going out the door and doing like internship with my congressman across the street. He then, I really wanted to come to DC. He's like, okay. So they took one kid a year to go to DC. I was the kid. Upon graduation, made $800 a month, worked on Capitol Hill. I was answering phones, writing letters to constituents, things like that. And then I got a shot at running a House race in Pennsylvania. I was the youngest campaign manager in America at the time, 1994. I was an open seat. It was tough. I didn't know what I was doing. I had like 200 volunteers working for me, and I was like 23 years old. But it was okay. It was fun. It was exciting. We lost. We're the only Republican that lost that year, by the way.
Oh, no.
That was the Continental America with Newt Gingrich. Anyways, but I worked in politics, and somehow that evolved into working with software applications. And I saw an opportunity to redesign how we track donors, and like software to track donors and that application. And that led to one thing, led to another, and eventually ended up at Microsoft. I like politics, but there's a lot of nepotism in that world, and there's a lot of it's not merit based. Let's just put it that way. So it's like donor based is how you really get ahead. And I was poor. I don't have any money. So things just pivoted. But again, challenge, interest, and aptitude. I had the aptitude. I had the challenge, but I lost interest in that space. And then when I finally ended up in software and joined Microsoft in 1996, the day I joined with a bunch of other people on our first day, it's like Windows NT had just come out. I mean, it was like that. That's how old I am. Everything kind of fell into place. The challenge, the interest, the aptitude. I did not know anything about software. It was totally challenges. I'm very interested in technology. And aptitude, I just applied all the learning skills from being a server, being in the restaurant business, being in hospitality, to sales. And they gave me this question when I was interviewing, Jamie. I don't think I already told this story. They're like, if you could be an entertainer, this is my interview question. What type of entertainer would you be? And give us an example right now. And I was like, oh my God. And I said, I guess comedian. And like, well, okay, give us some material. I'm like, what the? So
they made you tell a joke right then and there?
I started impersonating my father. I did my dad's German.
You're fired.
You're fired. And like other stories about my dad, but yeah, it was funny. And I was laughing at myself during it. And they're like, okay, you're in. So, and the rest is history from there.
I think I love hearing this. So just to recap, hard work is the tenet trying new things, not being afraid to do so. When I met you at Microsoft, well, I met you prior, but we were on the same leadership team or extended leadership team for a very short period of time. And the way I experienced you, I remember one meeting where our leader was, leading a discussion, and my two colleagues, not you, were weighing in profusely about the direction we should go. And I weighed in a little bit, and everything we were talking about was sort of incremental, how we could be incrementally better. And all of a sudden, Dave said, well, Sig, what do you think? And you had just sat there quietly listened. And then out of your mouth came this completely transformational idea. And I just watched, myself included, like 4 jaws drop to the table. Like we were like, huh. And what was interesting about that was it was simple in a way, yet so revolutionary. And that's what you bring, or I see that you bring to your work. I would love to hear about, how you brought that to Microsoft and whether, and really how you did that, right? Because all I see are outcomes. I'm like, I want to be able to bottle that up, but I'm not sure how, and I'm hoping you can break it down for us.
Yeah, thanks for that memory. A couple things. I like to say that necessity is the mother of invention. And when you are being told, and I love this role, I'm like, I just worked on the Air Force team. We closed the biggest deal in Microsoft history in that Air Force Defense Agencies. Then I got this role as business applications, and eventually head of all education for the United States for K-12 and higher ed for Microsoft. Awesome experience. And even there, we did weird things. We started doing statewide deals, working with governors. No one ever done that before. I'm like, why not? Why weren't we doing this? Let's just go to a governor. And we came up with this concept. I don't know. I did the math. It was like, how much do we charge for kids to get, certifications on Microsoft Office and Windows? And it ended up being like thousands of dollars per enrollment. I'm like, we want to make it like $1 per kid. And it's the same math, right? And like, I guess, yeah. Like, okay. So we go to the governors, your former governor, Nikki Haley, and Governor Haslam in Tennessee, and Governor Christie in New Jersey. We all met with all these governors, and we're like, how about every kid in your state can get a Microsoft certification, get them into college, get great jobs for $1 per student per year. They're like, okay, that's great. And even the governor of North Carolina put in a brochure as a reason to move to North Carolina, because she's offering that to every student in that state. But back to this thing where the moment you're talking about, we were challenged. We had to sell a lot of CRM software, and no one's buying sales tools for, like, no government and federal public sector, they're not buying sales tools. Maybe education, you track students in a sales kind of process in CRM. But what I've learned, like, wait a minute, you're telling me this product interfaces with Microsoft Outlook. You can develop any kind of application on it, like including a geospatial, satellite imagery, things like that. And they could all sit inside an Outlook inbox, like in folders. Like, I'm like, well, then we should sell it as a development platform. We should call it XRM, anything relationship management. And we started doing that, and we started positioning it that way. They gave me some money, some marketing money. Thank you, Eddie Marshall and Satya, who was running business applications at the time. They gave us like a couple $1 million of investment funds. So we were very careful at how we positioned that. And we started winning some big deals. Our first big deal, I think average deal size was like $500K back then. We brought in a $5 million contract with USDA to track farms. Like, they take satellite images to, most people don't know this, but USDA pays farmers not to grow crops to keep like the economy in check, whether it's cotton or corn or whatever. And so satellites fly over and they take pictures, and that geospatial imagery is linked to a case and linked to a farmer and inside our CRM product at that time. And it was awesome. It was the biggest, it was like huge, a $5 million contract with an average deal size of $500K. But it proved my point that we can sell this thing as a development platform called XRM. So it worked out pretty good.
It's a big idea, right? It's just thinking differently and throwing it out there. Probably you just gave me a memory, my one SIG moment that I'm probably most proud of. I'd just taken over the ERP business in the US on the commercial side. And I was standing out in front of my team, and I had just received the quotas for that year. They were enormous. And I'm thinking, how the heck are we going to do this?
Yes.
And as I looked out in the audience, I could see like there were two camps. There was like the pro Jamie camp, like, yay, we love Jamie. She's great. I was brand new to the team. And like the skeptical camp. They were like, who is she and why is she qualified to even lead this team? It was the biggest job I'd ever had. And I stood in front of the team and I said, I'm looking at our quotas and our average deal size is $200,000. I just think we need to sell $1 million deals. Like because our quota is going to go down a lot faster if we just do $1 million deals. And everybody started laughing. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. And you could see the skeptical camp. They're like, I told you she doesn't know what she's talking about. But what I learned in that experience, that year we sold 9. We'd never sold one before. And we sold 9 that year. And what that taught me was we put artificial limits in place for ourselves. We sort of put ourselves in a box. But if you can just, have an idea, usually the simple ones are the best. And rather than putting all your energy into explaining why it's not possible, you put that energy into figuring out and making things happen. I literally believe just about anything is possible in that respect. And I wonder if teams often do that.
Yeah, Jamie, why? So it sounds like, so you did kind of what I did, but I mean, first of all, my team is the one that made everything happen. I don't really take any credit for it, but you do have to point your, like, Babe Ruth style, point at the bleachers, like, I'm going to hit a home run right there. Like, that's gutsy to have to say that out loud. And you sounds like you did it and you made it happen. How did you make it happen?
Well, my team did it too. All I had was the big idea. Let's just go do $1 million deals. And the conviction that we could, it was my team who were way more expert at that solution area that kind of figured it out. My role was just to challenge limited thinking along the way. So I didn't know how to do $1 million deal. I don't even think I could have, right? They figured it out and we just iterated as we went. And then I think people got kind of energized about that. They did something that they thought that wasn't possible. And then that unlocked this whole thing on the team where they started believing that anything was possible as well. So I think it is the team.
No, 100% is the team. So the secret to my success has always been about working with people, extracting the best out of folks that you inherit, and then finding the right talent that when you have open positions, or arguing your case, making a business case why you should hire more headcount resources. I've had many teams where I grew up through the ranks. I'm like, I got 12 heads. I'm like, I need 20. Like, what? Like, you're not going to get 8 more. I'm like, well, give me quota and revenue per behind each headcount. And here's my plan, and I'll stage it and that sort of thing. And it's worked out. But the taking the time to hire extremely talented people, and I personally I do background checks and references on everybody. Like, I do all the reference calls on not 3 layers down, but definitely my leadership team. I go really deep on that. Maybe 1 more layer down. Sometimes I'll do that, but I'm very careful about how you hire. And it's better to take a long time hiring the right team and then encouraging them and empowering them immediately than it does to, hope for the best. You know what I mean? Like, you really have to hiring is, and I learned that Microsoft, I learned that I watch it in the restaurant business. I have my own management consulting company recently. Hiring is the most important thing. And again, I'm empowering your team.
If I heard you right, you don't outsource reference checks. So you spend probably multiple meetings when you're about to hire a leader on your team, and you do all the reference checks yourself versus outsourcing that to a third party or a recruiter?
We do what's legally required for HR. Like, we outsource our HR. Our current company, we outsource HR to. We have a PEO for that. They're pretty good at it, and fine. They have to do that. They have to reference, employee. They have to do that kind of stuff. And then we have a lot of people's top secret secure clearances, including myself, because of the nature of the business we do. So they do that. But I personally call everybody. Give me 3 references. I want to hear the stories. I call and of course you're going to get the good stuff, right? Oh yeah.
How do you get past the good stuff? What do you ask them on these reference calls?
So I'll ask, okay, what are they not good at? And you have to give me something. I'm not leaving. We're not getting off the phone unless you give me something. Okay, well, they're not good at this, or they could be better at that. Or I would say that, and then tell me a story. And what they usually do is they'll say a story about where they're not good at something and overcame that. did really well. That's fine. That's good. It's what you want to hear. But you want to know what you're getting into. And at this point in life, I mean, we have so many, we're so fortunate to have accomplished so much that pretty much the people that are coming in are like referrals from referrals. So, people are vouching for them already before they come in the door. And so, now, but if I'm running 1,000-person company, that doesn't scale that way. You can't. I mean, you still have to like at least call one layer down and a layer. But this is your team. This is who you're going to battle with, right? And I read all the stories, like you were asking me about winning big. I read all these books: Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Patton, Rommel. Like how do they win with the limited resources, and what motivated them? I learned a lot from military history, and it's all about the team. Alexander the Great had like 200 guys on cavalry he would like run in a battle with every single time. They're like brothers, like they're like super, super tight. You get to know all of them extremely well. You have to think that way. Again, you're counting on them. You delegate things to your people, and you don't hope for the best. You know you're going to get the best because you thoroughly research everybody inside and out.
So it's hiring the right team, hiring really smart, hiring well so that you can delegate. I still think there's something, so that's one part of it. I still think that there's something around the spark. Maybe that's the way I should think of you, like you're the spark. So you can hire really great people who are super smart. I wonder what you think about this. I think that most people aren't really encouraged to be boundaryless in their thinking. Right? They've sort of, we go to school and we're in a box. We get our first job and we're in a box. And one thing that I see you do is if you have a really smart person with all the right stuff, you've hired well, and if you can just leave them to their own devices, they'll do amazing things. But there's something about your leadership that challenges and creates a spark such that they're thinking bigger than maybe they could have. I don't think you would have done that $5 million or $500 million deal at Microsoft, which was unprecedented without that. What do you think about that?
One of my favorite managers, Barry Ridgway, he's the one that encouraged me to become a manager for the first time as a rep on his team. I was loving life. I was single. I was flying to Germany for my account, USAFE. I was going to Hawaii, PACAF. Air Mobility Command, Scott Air Force Base at St. Louis. And he's like, well, I'm leaving as the manager. So I think you should consider putting your hat in the ring to be a manager. I'm like, I don't want to be a manager. Like, I'm enjoying that. Like, what's this? This is too soon. I wasn't even 30 years old yet. And he's like, well, think about it this way. Being a manager will make you a better father. Do you want to be a father? I'm like, yes, I do want to be a father. He's like, you'll be a better father. And being a father will make you a better manager. I'm like, okay, well, I'm watching you do that. And he just had become a father, and he's an awesome manager. And I'm like, okay. I was like, and do you want someone else to control your own destiny, or do you want to control the destiny? Like, I would rather be in control of the destiny. And he's like, okay, so get after it and go get a plan together. And that's where, one thing led to another. Again, I was fortunate enough to be around the Air Force team. So it was the Air Force team at the time. And Steve Ballmer, the CEO of Microsoft, was our executive sponsor. And I got to know Steve. And I had this moment where we were trying to do this that big deal you're referencing that I talked about earlier. It's the largest deal in history. And I love making history. That's the thing. So the spark I like making history. I love reading about history. I like making history. I've made history a couple of times, but it's not me. It's my team that's done it all. Like, sure. Really, it's like we did it all together. But Steve went to our... And
Steve Ballmer, former CEO of Microsoft, right? Yep.
Right. Okay. And I was kind of auditioning for this role as manager, as like acting manager. They made me do that for like a year. Kind of lame, but anyway. So at this meeting, I remember getting all these like supporters at different Air Force components that rolled up to headquarters and got them all on our side, because the headquarters wasn't crazy about this big Microsoft concept. But the locals did. I mean, all the guys that ran all these commands did. And, and Barry's like, own the room. He's like, you're going to have this one moment where like everyone's going to be looking who's in charge. You have to look like you're in charge of the room. I'm like, okay. Like, I'm comfortable doing that. I was like, just do it. I'm like, okay. And I did. I'm like, hello, sir. Yes. Good point. Everyone over here, like, this is the thing we're going to do. Like, this is why it's important. This is the benefit everyone's going to get from this. You're going to save money, you're going to maximize value, increase security, increase productivity, and like all these stats and stuff. And then I remember Steve talking to Kirk Colson, who was the leader at the time. He's like, who's this guy? He's like, I want him running the show. And Kirk called me later and told me that story. When they were taking him to the airport, I'm like, oh, it's nice. It's humbling. He's like, okay, well, you got the job. So anyway, and then we eventually got the contract. It was huge. It made history. And I remember watching it on CNN, or not CNN, MSNBC was like the ticker news story went across the bottom. And when I was interviewing at Microsoft years before, like, we're only going to hire people that can make history and news. And I remember walking into the coffee room or whatever we had in the lobby area and taking a picture of that like thing that went across, like the scroll at CNBC. I'm like, okay, I did it. I made it. But again, it wasn't me. It was the team. But we made history. It was so fulfilling, so satisfying, so gratifying. It took a long time. My wife wasn't crazy about all the, sitting on the porch, making late night phone calls with all these like influencers to make that happen. But it worked out. But it was very difficult, very tough to kind of herd all the cats to make it happen. But I learned a lot from that experience. And once you do it that one time, you believe in yourself forever. I'm like, let's just do it. And like, you just put out these ideas with customers and prospects. Like, what do you want to have happen? And so the other thing, Jamie, I would say I learned from the whole experience is, this is what I teach our sales guys, especially younger folks, is find out what people want, because everybody wants something. They either want to not make a mistake and be in the front page of a newspaper, especially public sector, or they want to be known for something that's successful. Ambitious folks, it's this or this. And definitely in public sector, that's the case. And but you got to spend some time, get to know people. And it's hard because they don't like to go out to dinner. They don't like to go out to lunch a lot of times. You can't really buy them things. Like, you can't do that. So it's hard to kind of build those relationships. But once you get to know what they want, then you can find a way to get them there and put a package together that achieves success for your own company and for them, the outcomes that matter for that organization, impact oriented.
Excellent. All right, I want to walk this back and kind of summarize, because I think there's so many gems. And I'm wondering if you even have a small unconscious competency around all of this, because I'm going to keep pushing on the Spark thing. So it's all about the team. Totally get that, right? This idea that as a leader, we don't have to have all the answers, right? Our role is to spark thought and spark innovation and spark interesting ideas, right? So if you're going to make history, which I know you want to do, I think we all want to do so to a certain extent. If you want to make history, you have to do something different, better, more innovative than what has come before you. Otherwise, it's not news, it's not history, because it's just normal, right? And I think what you do, and I see you do, I experience you doing, is you throw out those big ideas, and because you're surrounding yourself with people who have a growth mindset or wanting to do more, it gets them thinking and gets them creating things that may even surprise you. You don't have to have all the answers. And I'll give you a great example. You did it to me last week. We met briefly to talk about planning for this podcast. And I said, hey, have you watched any of my season 1? And you said, yeah, I did. They're pretty good. But you know what, Jamie, can I give you one thing to think about? You're a really good interviewer, but you have something to say as well. So yeah. I think you should think about sharing your own ideas during the podcast as well. Like, don't overtake it. It should be 75% your guest, but you have more to say. And I was kind of craving that when I listened to it. That has rolled around in my head all week. So now that I'm talking more than I did in season 1, that's your fault. So thank you. But you were just that little spark. Yeah, it was just a little spark that got me thinking, and we'll see how it goes. But just that one little nugget. And so as leaders, I wonder if when we show up, we worry less about having all the answers, and we think more about having the ideas and the questions that are just going to spark something in those around us to create untold value, maybe even better than what we thought. What do you think about that?
So it never ends. The journey of development doesn't end, should not end. Even if, we hit it and we retire and that sort of thing, there's always going to be something else. I'm either going to be coaching my my children or my grandchildren, or I don't know, I'll be volunteering for something. I mean, everything I've ever done has been impact oriented, but I love hiring, coaching, mentoring. It's just, and just all I do is just tell stories about like my lessons. It's not like I'm gifted or I wasn't born anything gifts. I just learn from mistakes, watch other people's successes, and retell the story over and over and over to others, and let them absorb it. And they're like, okay. And if I have somehow earned respect that way, then great. Then they listen to it more intently. I mean, that's it. I think you just got to keep your head down, focus on what's going on. Don't try to be glamorous. Don't try, just things will happen to you. Good things will happen to good people. But you just got to like let it unfold. And when you do make mistakes, own it and talk about it, and be very clear about things. That's another powerful thing. Here's another tactic that I've learned. It's not, I don't know why someone taught me this, but I can't remember who it was. So on my leadership team, and they're going to probably watch this video and say, well, he's not fulfilled his obligation so far. But I make it a mission and a goal. So everyone that works for me, I want to have a dinner with them and their spouse or their significant other or their partner, whatever. Doesn't matter. Because there's going to be a day when you're going to have some tough news for that person, and they're not going to like what they have to hear. And they're going to go talk to that significant other, or the spouse, et cetera, what partner, whatever. And that partner's like, well, he seems like a good guy. Like, what are you talking about? Like, give him the benefit of the doubt, And I'm not doing that artificially. I'm very interested in everyone's families and their backgrounds and their history. But it has worked out. I mean, people are like, oh, I was mad at you. You had told me how to do something I didn't like to do. I was mad at you. And then my wife said, you're a good guy. So I slept on it and came back. And I'm like, okay, well, that was good advice. Someone told me that advice, and I carried that forward. So I just think you gotta just be yourself, be natural. Just, don't be so focused. And like when you talk about like not being status quo, I've never, I don't, why should we be status quo? What matters is the outcome. What matters is the success. What matters is hitting those numbers and making your team happy and successful, and for them to thrive. When I look at and I was struggling with this, Jamie, this podcast, I was calling people all weekend. I'm like, what am I going to say? I don't know, talk about myself. And so I was talking to Mir Capriles. I was talking to Mike Batt. I was talking to John Adamson. And what you've done for us is you've empowered us. You've made us great, and you left us alone. You didn't breathe down our necks. You coached us, but you left us alone. That's your thing. And you trusted us, and we thrived. And I look back, I'm like, maybe they're right. I mean, this guy, Eric Rosenkranz, that worked for me, is great. He's now VP at Google. I go down the list of folks that have worked for me, and they all have done really well. So I feel like I guess working out.
I think what you've done is you have given the gift of allowing people to experience that success. You said earlier in this podcast, once you do it the first time, you realize that you can do it again. And that is the gift that you give people, because you challenge them to think bigger. You empower them to do it. They go out and do it, and they realize that they can do it again. That's what you do, Sig. You talked about people a lot, and I feel like what you intend to do is be good to people. That's a sincere, authentic desire. But you're also sharing us then the practices, what you do to make that intention a reality. Dinners with spouses and different things. I wonder if you even do this. I wonder if this is intentional or unintentional. I'm going to ask you. So you came to Charleston a few months ago. And before we went out to dinner, you came to my house and you met my kids. Well, you had met them, but they were really little. So you met my 19-year-old son, and we were standing around the counter, and you started telling stories. You said, I don't know if you know, Luca, how amazing your parents are. They're so accomplished. And you went on to tell all these like very, very nice stories. Sometimes like, is he talking about us? Like, wow. And the result of that was that Luca saw his parents in a new light, had more respect for them as professionals. And I thought to myself, is Sig doing that intentionally because he understands how important it is for their kids to see their parents that way? Or is it just an unconscious competency that he does reading the room? Because there were some things going on, where Luca and us, we're at that critical stage. Everything's great. He's a wonderful kid, but he's coming of age. He's seeing that his parents aren't perfect and all those things. So you're doing it. I see the outcome of that. And is it intentional, or is it just a byproduct of how you, way back from the restaurant days, right? When you were just reading people and able to bring forward what you needed to?
I think being sincere matters, and kids know when you're being fake. Well, everyone knows when you're being fake. So not being fake, try not to be fake. I mean,
let's just don't be fake. Let's be like declarative around it.
And so, but I don't think, also with younger people, I will say I am intentionally, so when I do meet the spouses, and sometimes I meet children of people that work for me, I do approach them and talk about the accomplishments of their parents, because parents don't brag around the house, like, check me out, like, here's what I did. Like, they don't do that. So someone has to do that for them. Someone has to be an advocate for them. And so I have noticed that when I do that, it does have a result. So I'll admit that may have been a little bit of premeditated, like intentional. However, someone's got to do that. Someone's got to advocate for your parents. And I think, talking to families and reminding them of what's going on is important. One of the things, and you didn't ask me this, but I have it written down on my notes, is, one of my favorite interview questions, this is going to sound morbid, but it's important, is I ask this question a lot. What will they say about you at your funeral? How will you be remembered? How do you want to be remembered? What do you think they're going to say about you? And it's like, people are like, what? No one's ever asked me that before. I'm like, okay, but that's a natural question. And you clearly must, in your inner consciousness, have a feeling like, I want them to say it was this, I want them to say that. I'm like, are you that person? I'm halfway there. I'm 3/4 there. I'm like, okay. And what everyone always talks about is, they don't talk about like, I closed the biggest deal in history. They don't say that. They don't want to say that. They want to talk about integrity, honest, and like how impactful they were as a parent or a friend or a family member or something like that. And it's interesting. So when I hear all those things, I'm like, why wait till then? Why not have people start hearing about it now? And, so that's my little way of kind of bringing it out and getting the conversation started. But a lot of kids don't know how accomplished their parents are, and they should. Yeah. And they should be proud, because we worked hard to get the things we've got done. We made a lot of sacrifices for things. Sometimes we've like missed things for our kids, like the school plays, the games, the practices, whatever. It sucks sometimes, but we have done it, and everyone is listening to this will know exactly what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you for that. And I think it's just your read on people. So we talked a lot about people, hiring the right people, surrounding yourself. I am really pushing this idea of being a spark, and really thinking about how you get the best out of people. Is there anything else as you reflect on your leadership over the years, any lessons learned that you want our listeners to hear about today?
I would just say, find what you're like, know what you're good at and know what you're not good at as a leader. It takes time. You might have to like meditate. You might have to I think about that a lot when I walk my dog. I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna do right and wrong. It's just, there's moments where you're not engaged, and like you should like be self-reflective. And then what you did for me, Jamie, and this experience is you made me go out and like ask. Like I I was like, I thought I had my story straight. I'm like, but wait a minute, I don't have enough material here. Like, I don't have anything to say. And like, people are like, tell me stories left and right. I'll give you a story. Mike Batt's like, do you not remember that you sent me to an executive briefing conference in Redmond for Albemarle Colony? It was not going well. He's like, he's like, you didn't want to fly out. You're like, you're in charge, Mike. I'm like, Bill Gates, Satya Nadella, and Doug Burgum. Like, and Satya and Doug were taking notes while Bill Gates is like engaged with the customer, complaining about why we had 12 ISVs for Great Plains software that we acquired. I'm like, I forgot about that. He's like, yeah, I know, because you let us do all these things. Amir Caprilis is like, you hired me on a Monday for a certain job, and by Thursday we changed the role. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. He's like, see, so I just trust your instincts, and hire the right people and trust that they're going to do really, really well, and empower them immediately. Do not breathe down people's necks. Let them do their job. Let them be themselves, and reward them. My line that I like to say with people, like, oh, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to take, like, look, you got this thing. You're going to do it. I think you're going to do a great job. If you do a great job, you get all the rewards. Not me, it's you. You'll get a ticker tape parade. But if you fail, there's going to be some consequences. And, you got to own up for like accountability. Like, okay. And 9 times out of 10, people thrive in that opportunity. But you got to back off. You just got to let them do their thing and check in casually, that sort of thing. That's my style.
I have a feeling somebody needs to hear that, because if they're like me, I tend to be a mama bear. I want to like protect people, not let them make mistakes, and you can overfunction, right? So letting people, delegating, letting people go, being there to support them, of course, I think is great. I love your asking questions too. Very Simon Sinek of you. Like ask people how they experience you.
I make everyone watch The Power of Why. Simon Sinek.
Power of Why. I asked.
Changed our whole marketing behind that because of The Power of Why. So I'll leave you with this. So Power of Why. So how we open our company line is, we believe that everything we do impacts our government. We believe that we need to be a more competitive country, a safer country, and more proficient in everything we're doing, like productive. We happen to be a software company that does all those things. You want to check us out? Versus, we're a software company that does blah, 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 right? And like rattling off like those types of things is boring. And I watched those YouTube clips. I'm like, wow, we have to change everything about how we do our marketing. And we did.
I love those "we believe" statements, right? I think that's where it starts, right? Like this is what we believe, and therefore this is what we do. I asked a couple people when I left Microsoft about my why, essentially that same question, and Stacy has said to me, "Oh, you just get me unstuck," right? Was what she said, and that led to a period of reflection in me that helped me find my why, which is part of this podcast. So,
Jamie, what is your secret to success? Like, how did you get to where? I mean, you're such an accomplished leader in so many ways. Because I remember you entry level marketing, folding shirts at a show once, and now here you are coaching leaders as an executive. I mean, how are you? Like, what's your takeaway?
There's so much, right? I think I'd have to give that some thought, but I think what comes to mind is a lot of what you said today. One is believing that anything is possible. And I think what you connected for me today is when you put yourself out there and you try big things and you succeed, that builds the confidence and the resilience and the ability to see things that way. And so there is no big idea that you could share with me that I would say, oh, we couldn't do that. So I think that is one. It's absolutely surrounding myself with great people. I rarely have the big idea or the detail behind it. I rarely am the person that has the entire plan. I do think that I spark some interesting dialogue. I do think I push people out of their comfort zone to think bigger and to be, inspired and energized to take on new things, right? And when you get that flywheel going, that's where exciting things happen. But I think the biggest thing is curiosity and staying curious all the time, and a sincere desire to help others be successful. If you can help others be successful, whether it's your customers, whether it's your team, success has a way of finding you back. And you don't do it for that reason. It's not like this super backdoor way of being successful. It just is a byproduct of that. It's an others thinking. You talked about it earlier, finding out what people want, outward mindset. So I think that kind of, not very well rehearsed, but encapsulates my leadership, which is not perfect, but is how I think about the world. A bit Pollyanna.
You're okay. Well, you're self-aware about your curiosity. I mean, for sure. You definitely, I mean, having spent 10 years in the education business in higher ed and K-12, critical thinking is an incredible skill set to have. And some people are born with it, some people aren't, some people learn it. You have that. Like you peel the onion layers back and like, what's going on here? What's going on here? What's going on here? What's going on here? And that's hard. Most people don't have that. You definitely have it. And it's worked for you. I mean, I have my own things, you have your things, but your curiosity for sure. It's cool that you like, at least you get that part about yourself.
Thank you. I feel kind of shy talking about myself, but thank you for asking that question.
See, that's why this is why it's hard, these things.
So, moving to close, I ask every guest one final question. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
If you could wrap up by giving just one piece of advice about leadership, what would that be?
Hire the best talent you can find. Take your time doing that, and empower them immediately. Like day 1, day 2, day 3. Throw them. It's like when parents jump in the deep end of the pool, like them sweat. Like yeah, you got to do that. Don't coddle. Don't just, and you won't have to if you hire the best talent, by the way. You have to do a lot of research on that. Hire the best talent, empower them, and back off. And just, let them take all the success and rewards that they deserve. I was mad. Most people don't know this story, but when we won that big Air Force Defense Agency contract, biggest deal in Microsoft history, they only picked me to go on stage to get the trophy or whatever, put on the red jacket and stuff. I was very angry. I protested this. I'm like, I'm not doing this. My team did all the work. I'm like, I'm turning this down. It's like getting the Oscar. Like, I'm not going on stage. And they're like, you have to do it. Like, this is how the company works. Like, I'm vehemently protesting this. I even called Steve. I'm like, this is not Steve Ballmer. I'm like, I'm not doing this. He's like, you just play, just go on. You can acknowledge them on stage. So I did, but it's still, it's all about the team. So focus on your team. Again, being a parent, you don't walk around like, I'm the best parent in the world. Who says that? Check me out as a dad. Like, no one says that. You talk about the pride you have in your children and their accomplishments, your family, that sort of thing. You don't take credit. You don't take credit. Let them take the credit and give them all the credit.
And the rest falls into place. That's amazing advice. Thank you, Sig. Well, thank you for being on the show today. I appreciate you so much. I know our listeners have learned a ton, and just thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenny. Enjoyed it. Really humbled by the experience of being here with you today.
Thank you so much. Have a good one. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Join us every Tuesday for insider access to executive leadership.